So we'll start with influencers' role in promoting future trends. As you must know, influencer marketing is a marketing lever that consists in leveraging individuals to talk about your brand and products on social networks, especially Instagram, but we also see influencers on TikTok and other old-fashioned networks like YouTube or blogs. The great thing with influencer marketing is that it has been around forever, and your industry is the one that has been setting the trend. Whether you are launching a new collection or a new fashion brand, you need to work with influencers. But depending on the objective, you might want to activate different types of influencers. So we have 4 types of influencers: all stars, which are basically celebrities; the macro influencers with community that goes beyond 100K followers and who make a living out of being an influencer. Those are the person that you want to reach out to, spread the trends. But careful, they are very much in demand and might go soon out of stock. For us, they are a bit out of fashion. We then have the micro influencers with an audience that goes from 5K to 100K followers. They are super engaged. They have an audience that know exactly what they are looking for. They are very good to work with in terms of niche. They are the up and coming category. They are the link that connects you with your consumers. And they know their brands and they can perfectly advocate for them, not just once, but all year long through a series of campaigns or a brand ambassador program. They have a very close connection with their community based on trust and transparency. Lastly, you've got the nano influencers. Those are profiles with a very small followership. You've got 5,000 followers maximum. They have a close knit with community and their relationship with their followers is very close to what we call friendship. Collaborations between brand and nano influencers generates the maximum engagement. Even though it's pretty counterintuitive, the reduced size of the audience is actually a point in their favor. Nano influencers have true personal relationship with their followers. They interact with them on a daily basis through posts, likes, comments, and private messages. So they are excellent for hyper-targeted communication. So pioneer brands in the fashion industry have always worked with influencers such as celebrities. And more recently, they are moving towards the nano influencers. And that's where we see the trends going. To be honest, the fashion week will be nothing without the influencers, especially when COVID hit our industry so hard. Influencers are also great to reveal what is happening behind the scene or bringing a fresh look at your new looks. So you have set your objectives, you know what you want to achieve, you have identified the best influencers to match your need. Of course, you made sure that they were relevant, that their audience was true and not bots based 8,000 miles away. And do not forget that influencers are out there on social media, on dedicated platforms like Ivancy, but also within your ranks. Do not forget that employee advocacy is an incredibly important source of influencers. Now, let's talk about what you can do with them. To break out of the ordinary and innovate, there are 3 main trends emerging in what you can do as a fashion brand. You can gather consumer information on social networks thanks to influencers. You can launch consumer ratings campaigns, and you can do co-creation with micro and nano influencers. So, product reviews campaigns. You have 3 main reasons to run those kind of campaigns. You can boost your reputation of your product sheet to reassure consumers and trigger the purchase. People are really reassured by the reviews. That's what is going to trigger the purchase. You can provide detailed review to allow consumers to identify themselves and project themselves in the use of a product. Through reviews, you discover a lot of details about the type of skin, the type of hair, and a lot of things that are very personal to the users. And lastly, it's a good way to differentiate yourself because it proves that you are confident enough with your product to display those reviews. Basically, they have become an essential part of a customer journey. We don't see anyone now buying without reading a review. Of course, there are other reasons to use product reviews: build your brand image, boost sales, maintain your special relationship with consumers, which is very convenient. And consumer reviews work for both street fashion, but also high value products. So we see more and more luxury brands interested in those reviews. So I've got 3 recommendations to give you today. First, in terms of number, a minimum number of reviews you need to get for a product is 50. It's what we've seen with the usage and all the studies on the market. Then the reviews are not lasting forever. They need to be 3 months old maximum. And the law in some countries forces you to put the date of when you experience with the product. So you need to keep a steady stream of new reviews coming to your products. And lastly, you must go beyond the stars and the 1-sentence review that say, oh, great. You need to make sure that those reviews are detailed and really provide an insight on the experience people are going to get with the product. We surveyed around 4,000 French consumers in January this year, and we've shared with you a lot of details in our report. Today, we have about 57.5% of consumers that will read reviews before making a purchase, and 46% when it's just for in-store purchase. So even if they are not buying online, they will still read the reviews online. Reviews are super important when it comes to brands in the fashion industry. Fashion is the industry that accumulates the most online sales. And 52% of French consumers will read the reviews before buying a fashion item. So they are decisive for buyers, and a single negative review could dissuade them from purchasing. So you need to have a balance. You need to sometimes play defense by collecting reviews to protect you from the bad feedback you might get on a product. Let's not forget that the reviews also provide useful information on your consumer experience. You have information on the purchase experience, the delivery experience, the usage of a product, and also the experience with after sales. But if you love consumer insights, you will be interested in what's happening next. Imagine a world where you could garner thousands of feedback in 5 minutes, coming directly from your target audience, without bias, nor expensive market study firms. Influencers are not only a tool for brands to create quality user-generated content on social network, they are also a great source of consumer insight. You don't need a polling institute. You just need to ask an influencer to post a poll on his profile. And you will get directly thousands of replies that comes directly for their audience. And their audience are your consumers. So that's invaluable information from an audience that is directly connected to you. Take the example of a single photo. You can learn the location of a consumer, the date, the time. You have so much information you are going to garner through those consumer insights. When the influencer with whom you collaborate are aligned with your target audience, you can tap into the endless stream of information regarding their community. One influencer can open to you the knowledge of his full audience, where they are based, what they like, what are the keywords they are using. A lot of insights are coming from that. Influencers also can go beyond understanding the needs. Beyond showcasing the trends, they can also actively take part in them. And that's what we call co-creation. The co-creation is a powerful tool for brands that can help them achieve a wide variety of objectives. Creating innovative new products, building a new notoriety, boosting sales, creating quality content, leveraging consumer insight. But when you see what you can do with influencer, and the industry has been using influencer for a long time for co-creation, mostly famous people, celebrities, micro-influencers. But what we see is those co-creation can also happen with nano-influencers and micro-influencers. These small social media actors are powerful allies working towards certain objectives. Nano influencers are very engaged with consumers and can bring you feedback and creative ideas when it comes to what the audience is expecting. And co-creating with nano influencer is for us an upcoming trend for 2021 and beyond. And it will help you differentiate from other brands in the market. So I will give you some ideas of what you can do as co-creation, because people always think about creating a product. What you can expect from nano influencers and also micro influencers are the ability to play with your new lookbook, showcase your new fashion line, and they will play with it, play with the codes and create something else. They can interpret what you're doing as a brand to apply it to a new domain, illustration, other products. They can expand on your collection. If you have a series of clothing, they can add up to it. They can also provide designs and illustration that might appear one day on some of your products. You can offer them to play with the way they use your product in real life, maybe in an unexpected way. You know, being dressed with one of a few pieces of clothing, but using it in a different way. You can also give them the opportunity to be your next fashion show. As you've seen, physical events are so 2019. Do not forget that co-creation can be big like a new model, but also small like your ads campaigns, your influencers campaign, your packaging, your store concept. Leveraging influencer with useful collaboration will really harness the power of change they offer. Likability of your brand will skyrocket with the proof that you care, because involving your community and your influencer into your creation of product really means that you care about what your audience is expecting. And this goes way beyond simply inviting TikTokers to sit next to the catwalk. And now Melanie will take over.
Thank you. So like Joël was saying, it seems like the niche, the nano influencers are the ones that are more up and coming and who are more interesting really for brands to be looking at when they're looking at products or trends to try to get into the mainstream. So in this way, if we pay attention to the niche's possible sources, not even talking about influencers, but sources, trends can actually be detected before they catch on to the mainstream. And edgy influencers and stylists are usually the innovators who are the first to adopt a seemingly niche trend. They're the ones who are going to be wearing a trend that not many people are wearing that we'll see maybe 3 seasons later in the mainstream. But of course, niche sources do not always come from fashion. We have music, art, films, and the like that are equally important sources of inspiration, as they almost always bleed into fashion, whether it's brands or consumers picking them up and making them popular. So with that said, we select social media accounts, notably Instagram, of interesting profiles who are at various stages in the innovation curve. So logic follows that edgy people are at the top or the beginning of the curve, as they're the innovators and the early adopters of niche trends. Towards the end of the graph, we have the more mainstream people, as they're the ones who pick up on trends once they're already popular. So now let's have a look at how niche brands typically gain popularity on social media. And this happens in 2 ways. The most common way is through mainstream influencers. So these are the big fish, right? They're the ones with a large, more mainstream audience. So when these types of influencers adopt niche trends, the trends, of course, tend to get very popular. The best example is Kylie Jenner. We can see her in the bottom left image. And in this image, she's wearing a set from a brand called Tyrell. Tyrell was not a well-known brand before she posted this photo. Once she did, the brand gained significant publicity, and even the trend itself of wearing sets like this went mainstream. So the second way that niche trends can catch on to the mainstream is when a bigger brand collaborates with, or in some cases copies, a smaller brand, or a young creative. A good example of this is Anna Sui's collaboration with Anna Castellano, who had not even 3,000 followers at the time of the collaboration. Then we have the major brand Coperni, who collaborated with Alex Higgins, who had about the same amount of followers, not even 4,000, at the time of the collaboration. So when we see things like this happen, we understand that bigger brands give a leg up to niche brands who are the ones producing niche trends that big brands at the time are not making. So now we can look at some of the trends that EureTech has put together for the fall/winter 21 season in Europe and the US, and how they'll behave differently between these two geographies. And as usual, before I get into talking about the trends themselves, I'm going to go over our methodology and our metrics so that you can better follow along when I'm using some of the jargon talking about our trend analysis. So the way that we built our trend analysis today, we selected trends spotted on social media in Europe and the US for women's wear and covering all consumer types, so edgy, trendy, and mainstream. Our data source was, of course, Instagram, and we analyzed millions of images to capture the dynamics of trends in both of these markets, Europe and the US. Our analysis period, we will be comparing data from fall 2020 with data from fall 2021 to get the most precise comparisons. And finally, the way that we scan the images themselves is with our image recognition technology, which can recognize over 2,000 products and trends in images. So now I'm going to explain a little bit our metrics. And the way that we build a trend diagnosis is essentially by monitoring a trend's visibility. And a trend's visibility is, put simply, the volume of posts in which our AI technology detects the trend. So our growth rate, for example, describes the evolution of the visibility of a trend on social media images. This is where you'll see percentages either increasing or decreasing or flat. The magnitude is closely related. The magnitude does not describe the evolution, but the visibility itself of the trend on social media images, and this helps us to better understand the potential market demand of a trend during the season of interest. And put together, these two metrics, the growth rate and the magnitude, is what helps us to determine a trend status or trend cluster. And we have 6 different trend clusters, the lowest one being markdown, which is a trend to exclude from an upcoming collection, all the way up to a fashion bet, which is a trend to definitely include during the season of interest. Finally, we have the consumer segmentation, and this is very closely related to the influencer conversation we've been having. We have 3 consumer segments: edgy, which are the consumers that are wearing niche trends before they get into the mainstream. We have trendy consumers, which are those that are wearing trends right at the peak of their adoption. And finally, we have the mainstream consumers who are wearing trends while they're trendy, but also beyond. So they're the ones that are going to be at the end of that graph that we saw earlier. So our first trend today for the fall/winter 21 season in Europe and the US is crochet. Crochet was definitely a big hit for the season. We consider it a byproduct of the DIY and craftcore movements that we've noticed since the beginning of the pandemic, when a lot of consumers picked up sort of DIY crafty activities during lockdowns around the world. Dresses were the most popular iteration of crochet. We can see them at Jonathan Simkai, Anton Belinsky, and others, but we also saw sort of unexpected accessories, if you will. We saw balaclavas, shawls, and even leg warmers in crochet with designers like Miu Miu, which is this big image on the left, and Acne Studios as well. So the behavior of crochet in the US, it's going to have a moderately increasing growth rate of 11% in fall 21 versus fall 2020. It has a small magnitude or a small market demand potential. And together, we consider this trend to be a bold bet in the US. So US designers or designers with a US market audience can consider that crochet is a good trend to include in their fall 21 collections. The segmentation is universal. All three consumer segments are going to be interested in this trend, and it's likely due to the many choices of crochet that we can see. It's not just dresses, it's not just pants, it's not just accessories, it's all of the above. In Europe, on the other hand, crochet is going to have a little bit of a different behavior. It's going to decrease by 4%, but because this is a small number, we do consider this to be a flat growth rate. And combined with its small magnitude, the trend is neutral, which we call steady. So designers can include this in the collection, they can also not, but it's a quite reliable trend for fall 21. Finally, the segmentation for crochet in Europe is edgy. So this means that it's likely to be the more niche designers that are going to be including crochet in these collections, or designers that are mainstream, but go for sort of out of the box designs. Our second trend is medium orange, and we saw medium orange in a lot of designers' collections this season and in many different forms. Kim Shui, for example, featured a silk dress. Ami went for a statement suit. Sport Max went for a bodycon maxi skirt. There were a lot of different iterations of medium orange for the season. And medium orange has very similar behaviors in both places for the season. In the US, it's decreasing by 9%, and in Europe by 6%. We consider both to be a slightly decreasing growth rate. They have the same magnitude, small. And finally, they have the same trend status of steady. So medium orange is a reliable trend for collections in both Europe and the US. The only difference is between their segmentations. In Europe, the segmentation is going to be both edgy and mainstream. And when we see this sort of segmentation, it typically means that it's a trend that's been present for several seasons, which explains its mainstream appeal, but that designers with more out of the box designs, as I said earlier, are going to start incorporating the trend into their collections and thus appealing to more edgy consumer segmentations. In the US, finally, we're going to see a mainstream appeal. So lots of designers, lots of different kinds of consumers are going to be going for the color. Our third trend is white denim. And white denim tends to be a statement piece for those who have a more classic style of dress, which helps to explain why we saw so many designers with a simple, elegant, traditional brand identity, including this fabric in their fall 21 collections. The behavior is quite different between the two. In the US, there's a very flat growth rate for white denim of plus 1%. And with a medium magnitude, we consider it a safe bet. So a safe bet is one step above steady. And a safe bet is a trend that designers should include in their collections. But with that said, this is where consumer segmentation is pretty important because brands need to know to whom to target the trend in their collections. So in the US, there's an edgy consumer segmentation because it seems like white denim hasn't quite caught on to the mainstream, at least for the fall winter 21 season. In Europe, on the other hand, white denim has a strongly increasing growth rate of 21%. Coupled with its medium magnitude, we consider white denim a fashion bet in Europe. So this is a trend to absolutely include, particularly given its universal appeal. We can see that all three consumer segmentations are going to go for white denim during fall winter 21 this year. Next, we have midi dresses, and midi dresses feel like a compromise between going out wear and comfort dressing, which are two opposing trend movements that we're still seeing happening this season. Designers including Orly, Apujan, Act Number 1, and more that you can see here, all created completely different versions of the midi dress. Some are more glamorous, some are more comfortable. and all in different fabrics and in different colors, which is why this is such an interesting trend for the season. The behavior is pretty similar. It's almost identical actually between US and Europe. In the US, 1%, and in Europe, a -2%, both considered to be flat growth rates. But what's interesting about this trend is that in both places, there's a massive magnitude. So this means that there is a massive market demand potential. These two metrics put together classify midi dresses as a safe bet. In both places, designers should think to include this trend in their fall/winter 21 collections. And finally, in both geographies, midi dresses have a universal appeal, which helps to explain why we saw so many different types of designers, including so many different iterations of midi dresses in their collections, different fabrics, different colors, sometimes different lengths, different styles. This is explained by the universal consumer segmentation that we can see for this trend. Next, we have pink. For this season, we noticed all different shades of pink. We saw fuchsia, we saw pastel, and everything in between, from LRS, Chanel, Schiaparelli. These are some brands that went for more hot pink tones. Then we saw brands like Acne and Hermes that kept it toned down with pastel tones. We noticed that dresses were the most popular category for this color. But in any case, it seems like both consumers, both geographies, will be including pink in their collections. The segmentation is universal for pink, which similar to midi dresses can be explained just by its multiple iterations of the trend. It's not one fabric, it's not one color tone. And finally, we consider pink to be a safe bet in both places. So many different designers with many different consumer segmentations should include pink in their fall/winter 21 collections. And our last trend today are mono sleeves. And mono sleeves were not a trend we expected to see this season, but we definitely did notice it all over the runways in all 4 Fashion Week cities. So we saw Anna Kiki, for example, she went for a one-sleeved ball gown, which is something that we haven't necessarily seen. David Koma went for a more futuristic identity, and then we saw Dries Van Noten give us sort of a dance teacher kind of look. We can see in image 5 in the top right. So mono sleeves in both geographies are going to be a steady trend. So designers can rely on this trend for their fall/winter 21 collections. And their consumer segmentations are edgy, as this is sort of an out-of-the-box trend, and that it hasn't quite caught on to the mainstream. So those are all the trends for you today. Now I'm going to let Joelle sort of go over everything that we've said today to refresh your memory. And if you'd like to ask us any questions at the end, we'll be happy to answer.
So thank you, Melanie. So we have 4 key takeaways for you today. The first one is clearly the impact of influencer in the purchase decision making and how they are impacting the trends. The second one is about bright colors and daring silhouettes that will be a major trend with this fall in Europe and in the US. The third one is emerging trends that are good indicators of mainstream trends later on. So if you apply this logic to the influencers, make the maths, you will see that you are going to have a huge impact. The fourth one is that influencers and brands work together to both tell consumers what they want and listen to consumer desires. So it's a two-way relationship. And that's what we want you to keep in your mind when working with influencers. It's a two-way relationship, so you need to get insights also from them. Now, if you have any questions, we have some time to answer.
So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and then we'll get right to your questions.